Hi friends, it's your pal Scott Garibay, and today we are going to talk about Dungeons and Dragons, and we are going to talk about Star Trek, specifically recent comments by Brent Spiner, and how it explains the remove on Dungeons and Dragons that I often talk about. All right, let's dig into this. Okay, so Brent Spiner, he played Data on the Star Trek: The Next Generation, and man, oh man, like podcasts, good man, they are everywhere. Podcasts have turned out to be a very lasting medium and a very powerful medium, extremely powerful. I was very impressed. I am extremely impressed. Like, I don't know if you know this, but like, I without a doubt, I think podcasts gave Donald Trump 15% of his vote in the last election. Podcasts are extremely important. All right, so Katie Sackhoff, she played Starbuck in Battlestar Galactica. She was also in The Mandalorian. She was also on a show, Longmire, that I did not watch. But she has a long-standing Hollywood career, and she has her own podcast now, right? So she brought on Brent Spiner. And so they got into a conversation about science fiction, and the reason why is Katie Sackhoff is a science fiction veteran, right? Like they both do the same thing. They both acted for years in a successful science fiction show. Katie Sackhoff on the Battlestar Galactica remake, by the way, which is streaming nowhere right now, which was a little distressing because I was like, oh, I'm going to go watch that. And they're like, you can't. And I was like, uh-oh, anyway. So they started, and then Brent Spiner is on Star Trek. But they were discussing, so Brent Spiner got on this topic and he started talking about the difference between Star Trek and Star Wars. And I think he nailed it. So he said, hey, here's what's going on. This is the difference between, and by the way, Katie Sackhoff has been in Star Wars in The Mandalorian, and Brent Spiner is in Star Trek, right? Now, the reality is, without a doubt, Star Wars has been far more successful than Star Trek, and it's made a lot more money than Star Trek, okay? All right. Even though there's far more Star Trek content, there is the Star Wars content. The Star Wars content has been far more profitable, which I think is interesting. But Brent Spiner had a great point. So here's what he said. He said, Star Wars is a great adventure. It's a story of good versus evil. And then Katie Sackhoff then interrupted him and said something that was interesting. And she said, it's also about hope. I don't know if she's right about that. I think Brent Spiner was right that it's a story of, it's a great adventure that is about the fight between good and evil, right? And then he said, but Star Trek is but Star Trek is a story about explorers that really is about reflecting the world we live in, right? And okay, and that's it. Like, he's saying basically, oh, but Star Trek is a story that can directly discuss that. Star Trek is a story that can discuss the issues that we are currently dealing with in society, right? And so he was saying, like, Star Wars isn't about talking about current issues. Star Trek is. He's dead on correct, right? He went further. He then said, the reason Star Trek can do this is it does it at a distance, right? And that distance is space and the future, right? And that, looking at today's current events, current issues, and current events, at a distance is very valuable. He said, and then Brent Spiner said, it's so valuable that I think, that they've been doing 60 years of Star Trek. They're making a ton of Star Trek right now, and he thinks they will always make Star Trek, right? And I think he's right. I think he's right about every single thing he said. I think Brent Spiner genuinely understands the difference between Star Trek and Star Wars. He's 100% right in everything he said, which I think is really fascinating, right? So then, here's where we get to the D&D part. The other part he's correct about is this. He says a distance, right? And so that, and he even went even further. He said, it's not slamming you over the head with a hammer. It can talk about these issues subtly, right? I would add, and in a frame that people are desirous to watch it. You get to see, you get to see battles, and you get to see spaceships, and you get to see aliens, and you get to see, drama and dynamic action, right? All these things, right? But the thing that's really interesting is he's 100% right about Star Trek, and it has absolutely served, right, to answer questions about our own society for very smart people. Okay, I think only smart people watch Star Trek. I don't think not smart. If you're not smart, you don't watch Star Trek. All right. Hey, enjoy Big Brother, whatever. Yeah. Right. Yeah. Exactly. All right. But here's the part that directly connects to Dungeons and Dragons. So, Dungeons and Dragons does exactly what Star Trek does, but far more effectively. Okay. First of all, Dungeons and Dragons isn't bound to science fiction. You can do fantasy, you can do modern, you can do science fiction, you can do any intellectual property in the world, anything you want, right? It's all free, it's all hyper personal, right? And it does it with this remove that is even more effective than Star Trek, right? Star Trek, sometimes it's not even hidden. It's not. Here's the issue: are you messaging or are you preaching, right? And there's a difference, right? You can put your message into a story, right? But you can't preach in a story. People go on Sunday to get preached to. They don't go to the big or the small screen to get preached to. And this remove, right, allows the Dungeon Master to give any lesson that is needed by the people at the table. Anything, right? And this is being embraced today by the best Dungeon Masters. I will admit, many of the Dungeon Masters are completely oblivious. Hey everybody, welcome to my game. We're going to have fun. You won't learn anything. There'll be nothing of value here. And I trust and believe you won't change by the end of this session. But we're going to have fun. Derp, 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 derp. Okay, right, yeah, right. It's so frustrating, right? But there is this thing where you can, right? You absolutely can message. You can put a message in the story. And that could be a message that all of you players need to hear. That could be a message that one of your players has needed to hear every day they've been at that table. Or it could be a message that they need to hear today, right? Because their world is changing, right? And that is powerful. And I've talked about this. I'm like, hey, the value of Dungeons and Dragons is the ability to give, from any dungeon master, to give any message that is needed by anyone at the table at any moment, right? And it can be hyper personal, it can be hyper urgent, it can be hyper needed, it can be hyper important, right? And it's extreme. And this remove is the value that Gary Gygax put into Dungeons and Dragons, and it's why it's so powerful and so useful. And Brent Spiner explained it for Star Trek, but it's 1,000 times stronger, 1,000 times better, and 1,000 times more powerful and useful in Dungeons and Dragons. It's the remove, right? So, and the reason why I'm doing this video is I've had questions. People are like, what are you talking about, the remove, right? And Brent Spiner really illustrated it. Every single word you just heard in this video is my humble opinion. The important part is when I get to hear your humble opinion. When you get in the comments and send your traffic. Please consider subscribing and have a fetch millennium.